What would your reaction be if you found out that the very voices once hailed as the soul of R&B were, in truth, hiding shadows no different from betrayal, deceit, and even cruelty toward their own families? Sadly, that's not a rumor, it's the truth. One king of love songs once had a pot of boiling water thrown at him by his lover after a night of infidelity. A soul legend married his late best friend's widow, only to secretly sleep with her stepdaughter. And that's just the tip of the iceberg behind a wave of scandals that once shook the American music scene. No fewer than 15 legendary black artists spiraled into affairs, betrayals, and irreversible mistakes. And the chilling truth behind those stories will be revealed in the minutes to come. 15. Bobby Womack marrying his best friend's widow, then betraying the whole family. Kicking off this list is one of the most explosive affairs in Hollywood history. Some choices are so unthinkable, they make your hand tremble just writing them down. But Bobby Womack didn't just think about it, he acted, and he did so while the soil was still fresh on his best friend's grave. On December 11, 1964, Sam Cooke was shot dead in a cheap motel in Los Angeles. His death stunned the entire country. At just 20 years old, Bobby Womack was Sam's loyal guitarist and a protege Sam had mentored since his days as an unknown kid. He showed up at the funeral with haunted eyes, standing silently by the casket like he had lost his own blood. But just 3 months later, in early 1965, Bobby sparked outrage by marrying Sam's widow, Barbara Cooke. It was a remarriage that incited fury. People called it betrayal. Sam's family disowned Bobby. Radio stations pulled his music. The stages that once welcomed him now slammed their doors shut. And the tragedy didn't end there. In the house that once belonged to Sam Cooke, Bobby lived with Barbara as her husband, only to cross an unforgivable line. He had an affair with Linda, Barbara's daughter and Sam Cooke's biological child. She was only 16 when the affair came to light. Barbara lost control. One night in June 1970, after reading her daughter's diary, she stormed into the bedroom and aimed a gun at Bobby's face. Miraculously, he dodged the bullet and survived. But his music career did not. From that moment on, Bobby was clouded by scandal. His best songs were drowned out by whispers of betrayal, lust, and moral collapse. Even as he continued writing and performing small gigs later in life, he never escaped the dark shadow cast by that fateful wedding ring in 1965, the ring that marked the beginning of everything that went wrong. But if you think marrying a best friend's widow is the peak of betrayal, the next story crosses even deeper, bloodier lines. 14. Marvin Gaye, forbidden love and a fatal bullet from his own father. There's something Marvin Gaye once confessed in a 1982 interview. Long after the lights had dimmed, I don't fear being destroyed by others. I fear the things I can't stop loving. Tragically, that's exactly what ruined him. In the early 1970s, when What's Going On played across every radio in America, Marvin Gaye was celebrated as the conscience of a generation. His voice quieted the chaos of Vietnam, forced society to hear injustice, and made millions of Black Americans feel seen in a turbulent world. But inside the mansion he shared with his wife, Anna Gordy, another storm was quietly rising and no one could stop it. Anna was the sister of Motown's founder. She was nearly 20 years older than Marvin and had helped him rise from obscurity to national icon. But after nearly a decade together, when the marriage began to chill, Marvin found a spark in the worst possible place. That person was none other than Denise Gordy, Anna's niece by marriage, who was just 17 when their secret relationship began. In 1971, Denise gave birth to a baby boy named Marvin Gaye III, officially listed as Anna's child. When the truth leaked, Anna was not only devastated but furious enough to file for divorce with terms that nearly ruined Marvin. He was forced to surrender all royalties from his next album to pay alimony. That's why he created Here, My Dear, an almost 2-hour-long recording, shadowed and sorrowful, capturing every crack in his heart and every wound in what was once their home. Still, if the tragedy had stopped at love, Marvin might have had a way back, but the deepest pain came from the man he had spent a lifetime trying to please. Marvin's relationship with his father, Reverend Marvin Gaye Sr., had long been strained, It collapsed completely after Marvin fell into depression and addiction. His father could not forgive his rebellious lifestyle, and Marvin could not forgive the cold man who had once beaten his mother. On the morning of April 1, 1984, just one day before Marvin's 45th birthday, after a fierce argument, his father pulled a gun and fired. Marvin collapsed in his own home, in his mother's arms, without a single song left to sing. Marvin Gaye's death wasn't just the end of a legend. It was brutal proof that when love veers too far from its boundaries, it doesn't just break hearts, it can kill. 13. Teddy Pendergrass. One wrong glance and a career gone in flames. Sometimes, all it takes is one exposed truth to burn down a life's work. For Teddy Pendergrass. That moment came on the night of March 18, 1982, on Lincoln Drive in Philadelphia, when his silver-blue Rolls-Royce veered off the road and crashed into the trees amid roaring engines and shattering glass. Just hours earlier, Teddy was still the reigning king of modern soul, a man who could bring an audience to its feet with just a whispered note. His women-only concerts and steamy ballads like Close the Door and Turn Off the Lights had made him the embodiment of desire and fire. But behind the spotlight, Teddy was torn, forced to hide his true sexuality. When police and reporters arrived, the passenger was identified as Tanika Watson, a well-known transgender model from Philadelphia's club scene. The crash left Teddy paralyzed from the neck down. But what shocked the world more was who had been in the car with him. It wasn't just a car accident, it was a revelation that tore open the divide between fame and shame. Within 24 hours, a scandal erupted like wildfire. Radio stations stopped playing his music. Headlines screamed with cruel language. His longtime girlfriend quietly walked out of the hospital and out of his life. Teddy, once the most desired man in music, became a whisper passed between lips, sometimes in mockery, sometimes in pity. Lying motionless in his hospital bed, no one beside him. Teddy's eyes stared blankly at the cold white ceiling while silent tears rolled backward unseen by anyone. He continued performing later from a wheelchair, fueled by unimaginable willpower. But the spotlight of old was gone forever. People still listened to his songs, but always with the unspoken question what really happened in that car that night and what part of him was never allowed to exist in the light again. 12. Rick James, when desire becomes an inescapable prison. People once said that Rick James didn't enter the studio like a musician, but rather like someone surrendering to an endless whirlwind of desire. But by living as if tomorrow didn't exist, he lost everything before he even realized it. In 1981, the album Street Songs catapulted Rick James into America's rebellious funk icon. Super Freak wasn't just an immortal hit, it was his personal manifesto, a flamboyant, fiery man who knew no limits. During those years, Rick's mansion in the Hollywood Hills almost never saw nightfall. Neon lights never dimmed, music never stopped, and bare bodies constantly changed with each party. But beneath the wild parties was a different Rick James, exhausted from substance abuse, worn out from nameless relationships, and gradually becoming cruel even to the women who once admired him. One of the most shocking incidents occurred in 1991 when a young model named Frances Alley accused Rick and his ex-girlfriend of holding her captive for hours in a hotel room, forcing her to use drugs and assaulting her after she refused sexual advances. The story quickly made headlines across all newspapers, prompting other victims to come forward, exposing the dark side of a funk legend who once made the world bow. At the 1993 trial, Rick stood there no longer as the sexy king of the 80s, but as a trembling man with clouded eyes and a voice too weak to defend himself. He was sentenced to prison, and for the rest of his life, Rick James lived in the shadow of his former self, trying to make a comeback with a few small songs, but no one listened with the same reverence as before. Perhaps the very music that elevated him to greatness was also the unending call of temptations that dragged him down. And in the end, it wasn't any rival but Rick James himself who defeated Rick James. 11. Al Green scalded with a pot of boiling water. When police stormed into a Memphis mansion in the early morning of October 25, 1974, they found Al Green collapsed on the bathroom floor, his body severely burned, skin blistered, eyes wide in terror. The woman who had thrown a pot of boiling water on him, Mary Woodson. later ended her own life with a gun hidden in her purse. Just hours earlier, they had dined together, as they often did. Mary had been a longtime lover, a woman who had left her husband and children to pursue love with a soul music star at his peak at that time. Al Green was the voice behind Let's Stay Together, an R&B love song icon of the early 70s, a man whose voice could silence all of America whenever he sang. But behind the stage lights was a life of secrecy and betrayal. That night, Mary discovered he was still involved with another woman. No arguments, no tears, just a heart-wrenching scream as boiling water scalded his body, followed by a gunshot echoing through a mansion once filled with love songs. Al Green survived, but both his body and soul never fully healed. He turned away from the lavish life, became a pastor, and began preaching about faith, yet in every sermon, his eyes held something unspoken, as if he were paying for a sin he himself couldn't name. 10. James Brown, the king who dethroned himself due to betrayal. On a summer morning in 1988, American newspapers simultaneously published a shocking headline: James Brown's wife files for divorce after years of brutal beatings. Immediately, the illustrious image of the soul music king began to crumble, not due to a wrong note in a song, but because of an unheard slap in the darkness of his home. James Brown had been an untouchable symbol of African American music, from Papa's Got a Brand New Bag to I Got You. He had defined an entire genre, turning funk into the heartbeat of a generation's struggle. But behind the dazzling stage was a hot-tempered, controlling man who wouldn't tolerate disobedience. His young wife, Adrienne, had remained silent for years until she could no longer endure. She recounted long nights locked in rooms, unexpected punches amidst sweet promises, and a series of betrayals. When the case was filed in court, the public was stunned and then turned away. Organizers canceled performances, radio stations stopped playing his once legendary hits. James Brown never publicly admitted fault, but from then on, every time he stepped on stage, his eyes no longer met the crowd, as if he himself wasn't sure if he still deserved to be there. And then there are betrayals that require no words, just a mistimed embrace, enough for a star to be forever shunned by their entire band. 9. Otis Redding, a secret glance and an irreparable rift. In the summer of 1966, backstage at a Chicago performance, Otis Redding was caught kissing a young dancer just before taking the stage. The girl wasn't listed on any contract but appeared regularly on every tour. And just one secretive moment witnessed was enough to start a rift within the Bar-Kays band. At 25, Otis Redding was already the soul of Southern soul music. With songs like These Arms of Mine and Try a Little Tenderness, he didn't just sing, he made an entire generation believe in the sincerity of a black man in a still prejudiced world. But behind that voice was a young heart, still naive, and sometimes unable to resist the temptation of unfamiliar eyes backstage. Band members felt betrayed. Some of his closest associates began refusing to dine together, no longer conversing backstage. Harmony on stage became strained. Otis tried to hide the relationship. But on lonely hotel nights, familiar knocking and whispers not belonging to music were still heard. Just a year later, the plane crash on December 10, 1967 took Otis away forever. But the haunting part is that, by then, those closest to him were no longer by his side, and his death, tragically, wasn't associated with a glorious performance but with a farewell that was never mended. 8. David Ruffin, the domineering lover and the fall from Motown's heaven. There was a time when just David Ruffin stepping onto the stage and singing I've Got Sunshine on a Cloudy Day would light up the entire hall. His distinctive voice wasn't just the soul of the Temptations, but also the passionate heart of Motown's golden era. Yet behind the spotlight and neat suits, David was a lover who left many women fearful at the mere thought of him. In the late 60s, at the peak of his career, rumors of violence and betrayal began to surround him. His longtime girlfriend, singer Tammy Terrell, once appeared in a recording session with visible bruises beneath heavy makeup. She said nothing, but those behind the camera understood. Sometime later, she officially accused David of multiple assaults and deceiving her with numerous women during tours. News spread rapidly, uncontrollably. The public began to question, did the man who once sang sweetly about love truly deserve every word he sang? Motown quietly removed his name from promotional campaigns. The Temptations were forced to sever ties, even though David's voice was irreplaceable. From then on, he toured sporadically, appearing on smaller stages, the lights no longer as bright, and each time he sang, people didn't just hear the soaring high notes, but also sensed something had shattered, something David Ruffin could never mend with music. 7. Sam Cooke, One Night's Mistake and the Vicious Cycle of Betrayal. Before being betrayed by his closest confidant, Sam Cooke had already shattered the home he cherished. And then, tragedy began from there, like a door opening to unstoppable losses. In 1964, at the height of his fame, Sam wasn't just the king of soul music but also a pioneering activist, one of the few black men to own his own record company. But behind that image was an impulsive, passionate heart that often went astray. Though he publicly adored his wife, Barbara, on every tour, Sam always sought adventures. One of those led him to the Hacienda Hotel in Los Angeles on the night of December 11, 1964. There, he spent the night with a stranger he met at a bar. Hours later, Sam was found dead, unclothed, on the motel lobby floor, with 2 bullets through his chest. The woman vanished. The hotel manager claimed she shot him in self-defense, but her account had inconsistencies, and all investigations ended in suspicious silence. Barbara was devastated, but less than 3 months later, she married Bobby Womack, who had once called Sam his brother and owed him every step of his early career. Later, Bobby secretly had an affair with Barbara's daughter, also Sam's daughter. Sam Cooke departed amidst scandal, loneliness, and humiliation. But perhaps more painful than death was the cycle of betrayal he initiated, which returned to strike the very legacy he most wanted to preserve, and some mistakes, once sown, not only destroy one life but leave a bleeding wound that never stops in an entire family. 6. Barry White, the man of love, becomes the villain. Love in music can make people swoon, but love in real life, tainted by betrayal, can completely collapse a voice. Barry White understood this not just through a broken heart but with every weary breath backstage. He was once called the voice of the night, the man who made the world believe that love could heal everything, with a large frame, a warm, deep voice, and gentle eyes. Barry didn't just sing about love, he lived it, creating a flawless image of the ideal lover. But in the early 1980s, while his ballads still played on the radio, backstage tour gossip began to surface that Barry was involved with a young dancer. Though he never spoke publicly, his wife of nearly 20 years, Glodian James, silently left, leaving behind a home no longer filled with music. From there, everything declined. His later recordings lacked the original emotion. Barry gained weight, his health deteriorated, and the stage lights no longer held him as before. He continued to sing about love, but in that voice, people no longer found a promise but an indescribable, aching regret. 5. Ron Isley, a misguided glance that shattered a family. If Barry White lost his marriage to silence, then Ron Isley lost everything over a single wrong glance. Ron Isley was the pillar of the Isley Brothers, a band that crafted timeless love songs. He would step onto the stage with a calm demeanor, singing as if whispering a prayer to the only woman in his life. The public believed him, for behind each song was the image of a fulfilled artistic family, a faithful husband beside his talented wife, Angela Winbush. But in 1991, all of that shattered with just a few candid photos. A scandal involving an affair with a young model erupted like a wildfire in the dry season. Angela did not stay silent. She left home, severed all performance contracts, and filed for divorce in court with evidence that led to Ron losing custody of their young son. From a symbol of mature love, Ron became the subject of gossip. The old songs still played, but no one listened with a trusting heart anymore. He still stood on stage, but his voice now carried the faltering of a man who once had everything and lost it all. Next, the remaining individuals on this list will be involved in the most horrifying scandals, from relationships with underage students, exploiting dreams of fame for sexual gain, to criminal acts. Donny Hathaway, an affair in the dark and an end from the 15th floor. Donny Hathaway was once called a gentle genius, someone who could turn pain into a love song. But then, that very man made his most beloved wife cry not from emotion, but from betrayal. In 1978, after a performance in Chicago, Donny returned to his hotel room late. His wife, Eulalia, had arrived unexpectedly and caught him wearing a robe, holding a glass of wine, with an unfamiliar woman who hadn't yet left. She left angrily without saying a word, but from that night on, Donny began to spiral into paranoia. He had been diagnosed with bipolar disorder, but after that shock, his condition worsened. He locked his room, taped the windows, and feared even his closest friends. During recording sessions, he claimed voices were watching him. In the hospital, he whispered to doctors that someone wants to kill me. Just a few months later, on a cold January night, Donny fell from the 15th floor of the Essex House Hotel. No one knows if he jumped or was led by hallucinations. But everyone knows that after the night he was caught cheating, Donny was no longer himself, and music, no matter how beautiful, couldn't save someone losing the boundary between reality and remorse. 3. Eddie Kendricks, a night of infidelity in Atlanta, shunned by the entire band. On the night of June 14, 1973, after a performance in Atlanta, Eddie Kendricks walked into the hotel hallway with a room key borrowed from the receptionist. He said it was to retrieve a forgotten jacket, but no one questioned it. The room was dark, lit only by a bedside lamp, and the woman waiting for him was none other than the wife of a bandmate who had stood by him for nearly a decade. When the door closed, they thought everything would remain buried in darkness. But what no one expected was that the 8-year-old son of the bandmate had quietly come looking for his mother. The boy didn't knock. He just stood, peering through the sliver of light from inside, then turned away without a word. But the next morning, the husband received a scribbled note in pencil, "Mom is with Uncle Eddie." Though not confronted, from that day on, no one sat with him backstage. In the tour bus, he always sat alone in the back row. During rehearsals, no one harmonized with him. That silence lasted throughout the summer, colder than any accusation. By the end of 1973, Eddie left the Temptations with a brief announcement and no farewell. He pursued a solo career, releasing heartfelt love songs. But in every note, one could sense something had broken, and for the rest of his life, he never once mentioned that fateful night, nor did he ever look into the eyes of the boy from years ago, the only one who saw everything, and whom Eddie never dared to face again. 2. Gerald Levert, the heir of a soul dynasty repeating past mistakes. If Eddie Kendricks was the beginning of betrayals within the musical family of the Temptations, then Gerald Levert was the child expected to mend everything, to reconnect family ties through his voice, honor, and the remaining trust of the next generation. As the son of Eddie Levert, leader of the OJs, Gerald grew up among men who stepped off the stage lights and into family dinners with the smile of a winner. He once said he wouldn't repeat his father's mistakes, wouldn't hurt anyone who placed their trust in him, especially his wife, the girlfriend of 10 years, and mother of their 2 young children living in Columbus. But everything collapsed on a September afternoon in 2002 when a 17-year-old girl, his prized student in vocal training in Cleveland, appeared in the lounge of Atlantic Records with red eyes and a recording on her phone. She was the one Gerald had introduced to his wife as an excellent, promising student, had invited to dinner at their home, and whom his daughter called sister. Gerald's voice played in the recording, not shouting, not coercing, but whispering like a lullaby. "We don't need to tell anyone. You just need to trust me." The girl didn't go to the police, but the recording went straight to the record label's director. The contract was canceled within 4 hours. The fall tour schedule was erased from the system upon learning of the incident. His wife left home, taking their 2 children. Unreleased recordings were indefinitely shelved. His closest friends changed their phone numbers without explanation. On November 10, 2006, Gerald died of heart failure in his sleep at the age of 40. In his will, there was no mention of any lover, no final words for any young girl who had passed through his life. Only one line was left for his father: "I'm sorry for repeating what they did, and I don't know where to stop." 1. R. Kelly. when an entire generation idolized the wrong person. Perhaps the final figure here is the most condemnable R&B artist on this list, because his mistake wasn't just betrayal, but a horrific crime. If Gerald Levert stumbled in a moment of weakness, then R. Kelly descended into hell with fully conscious steps, and he was the one who dragged dozens of young voices down with him, one by one, in silence. In August 1994, Kelly married Aaliyah when she was only 15 years old. The marriage certificate stated she was 18, and they held a secret ceremony in Rosemont, Illinois. The entire crew knew, the family knew, but everyone remained silent, thinking it was an accident, a mistake that could be concealed. No one realized this was just the first piece of a horrifying puzzle. From 1996 to 2008, numerous underage girls were brought to his private residence in Chicago under the guise of talent training. They were separated from their phones, not allowed to call home, and dressed only as instructed. Some were required to call him Daddy. Some were removed from the studio for disobedience. In 2002, a leaked video showed Kelly engaging in inappropriate acts with a girl only 14 years old, despite his denial. The case dragged on for 6 years and ended in suspicion. By 2019, the documentary Surviving R. Kelly aired, revealing a series of organized mental and sexual abuses spanning nearly 2 decades. Then, 2 years later, he was officially sentenced to 30 years in prison for charges of abuse, trafficking, and unlawful confinement. On the day of the trial, R. Kelly bowed his head, saying nothing. The crowd outside the courthouse didn't jeer but stood silently, because they had once loved that voice, once placed their trust, once believed he was a dream that could fly. But no one realized that dream was woven from tears, abuse, and doors locked tight for 20 years that no one dared to open. So, the stars who once left the world speechless with their voices, once called the soul of R&B, the epitome of passionate love and fidelity on stage, had such incredibly dark corners. When the truth was exposed, they lost everything from family, loved ones, careers, to the trust of the public who once revered them as legends. Their musical legacy remains, but the stain can never be erased. Among the 15 names just mentioned, who disappointed you the most? Who made you unable to believe it was true? And if you want to know who else was chased by his wife with a gun after a night of betrayal, who else exploited students calling him teacher to satisfy his desires for many years? Leave your thoughts below and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. The truths behind the glamour will continue to be revealed in upcoming videos.